In 1982, he was transferred to Portsmouth Prison here in Cape Town. Following his release, he was elected to serve as a member of parliament representing the ANC. Today, at the age of 85 years, he sees fight for a free and fair society. He is one of the very few who deserve the title of living legend. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, please be upstanding and offer your special thanks to Ahmed Kathrada, also known as Kathy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Program Manager, Comrade Vavi. Well, I get a lot of strength from your presence here. I can't proceed without identifying my twin. My twin, Emma Mashinini. I say she is my twin because we are born on the same day, the same month, and the same year. So it's wonderful to be in the presence of Comrade Emma. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm at a disadvantage in that I haven't been given a topic to speak, neither have I been told how long I've got to speak. So I must say that I was in prison for a long time, and being a politician, having been deprived of freedom of speech, when we see gatherings like this, we try to make up for the years that we have lost. So don't blame me, blame the organizers for inviting me to speak. It's the first time in my life that I've been asked to speak at such an august gathering. I must thank the organizers very much for giving us the opportunity to speak to you. As I said, I was not given a topic. So what I'll do is I'll start off by speaking about Madiba. I met him for the first time in 1946 when I was at school and he was at university. And that little meeting made a lasting impression on me. He was able to relate to me, a youngster at school and he at university. He was able to relate to me as an equal. And that was Madiba's strength. No matter who he speaks to, kings, queens, peasants, aristocrats, he speaks to them as equals. I can always recall a morning when he had invited to breakfast, and he was on the phone. And he ended the phone conversation by saying, "Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Goodbye, Elizabeth." So when he ended, I said, "Now, who's Elizabeth that you're speaking to?" He said, "The Queen." So I said, "But how can you speak to the Queen and call her Elizabeth?" He says, "Well, she called me Nelson, so I call her Elizabeth." Now that is Madiba, and that was Madiba. Yesterday, I think it was almost a year of his passing. And I was asked by the media how I felt. And I told them that I miss him every day of my life. I literally grew up under him. We were in 3 court cases together, major court cases. The Defiance Campaign case of 1952, in which 20 of us were found guilty and sentenced to imprisonment, but the whole imprisonment was suspended. We were together in the treason trial, the marathon treason trial, which lasted for 4.5 years. Started off with 156 accused, but ended with only 30 of us. And at the end of 4.5 years, we were all found not guilty and acquitted. Finally, we were in the case that sent us to jail. That was the so-called Rivonia trial, in which there were 8 of us who were accused. And the 8th colleague was Dennis Goldberg. And being white, he was not with us on Robben Island, because under apartheid, whites and blacks, from birth to death, in prison and out of prison, separate cemeteries, born separately, grow up separately, go to school separately, die and be buried separately. So Dennis was not with us on Robben Island. Having not been given any topic, I'm going to speak briefly about our experiences on Robben Island. 7 of us, led by Madiba, were suddenly woken up in the middle of the night, handcuffed, leg irons, driven to the airport, the military airport near Pretoria. And there when we approached the plane, they took off our shackles, put us on the plane, and the next morning we landed on Robben Island. On a very cold winter's morning, rain, wind, and a very chilly morning. At the age of 34, I was the youngest of the 7. Governor Mbeki, 20 years my senior, Walter Sisulu, 18 years my senior, Madiba, 11 years my senior. I was 34, I was the youngest. The first thing we had to do is to change into prison clothes. And that's where you see you are struck by the humiliation. As I said, all my fellow accused or prisoners were older than I am. Changing clothes, because I was an Indian, I was given long trousers. My colleagues, because they were Africans, they were given short trousers throughout the winter. Governor Mbeki, 20 years my senior, Walter Sisulu, who in fact was my father, short trousers. The rationale behind short trousers in apartheid South Africa was that all Africans, regardless of age, regardless of sex, were boys or girls. You had little children talking of my garden boy, my kitchen girl. That was apartheid South Africa, and boys wear short trousers. Instinctively, we wanted to reject this different treatment. And Madiba said, you would be wrong to give up what you've already got. We must struggle for equality at a higher level, but not give up what you've got. It was very difficult because we, colors and Indians, were given a quarter loaf of bread every day. Madiba was given bread for the first time after 10 years because he was an African. Fortunately, in the section of Robben Island where we stayed, on the average of 25 of us, about a dozen or more of us were either Indian or colored, so that when there was a bit of relaxation, we were able to pool all our food together so that we had the same food while we were together. Until after 10 years, the food was equalized. The short trousers that Madiba was wearing was for 3 years, and then that was also equalized. We worked with pick and shovels for 13 years. Now Madiba and our elders, who were all suffering from high blood pressure, could have easily asked for exemption. They refused to ask for exemption. Madiba was with us with pick and shovels throughout the 13 years that we were working at the quarry. We had several hunger strikes on Robben Island. And there again, we asked our seniors that they should be exempted from the hunger strikes. Madiba and his colleagues refused to be exempted. They were on hunger strike with us whenever we were on hunger strike. Now that was the essence of leadership. You lead from the front. You don't accept any preferential treatment. "13 years after we were on Robben Island, Madiba was called aside and offered release, provided he goes and stays in the Transkei. His response was, the whole of South Africa belongs to me. I am not prepared to be sent to the Transkei. He refused to be released. In 1985, all of us were offered release. At that time, after 18 years with Madiba, 5 of us had been transferred to Portsmouth prison. All of us were offered release on condition. Madiba was called to the office in the morning, and he came back. He was a very cool person. Came back, hello chaps, got to his newspaper, and he says, by the way, I was called to be told that President Botha has offered to release us. So he was so cool that this was just by the way. He tells us that after so many years we've been offered to release. Of course, we didn't have to debate that because we were being released on condition. And we were refused to be released on conditions. Our demand was for full, unconditional release. And that happened when Madiba was separated from us at Portsmouth prison. He started talking to the other side, to the government. And his demand was, South Africa will never be peaceful until you have a negotiated settlement. There's no need for all the bloodshed. Let us talk. Let us sit around the table and come to a peaceful solution. Now he was talking first to the prison officials, then to cabinet ministers. As a prisoner, he was talking to them. Eventually, after many years, they accepted that. And he said, but you must abide by certain conditions. Release all political prisoners, unban the organizations, the ANC, the PAC, the Communist Party, allow the exiles to come back, and let us talk. After a while, the apartheid government abided by all the conditions that Madiba had set. We were the first group to be released, the Rivonia group, after 26 years, but Madiba himself was not released. He stayed a year extra because he didn't demand his own release. He demanded the release of others. So he was there for 27 years. And after release, of course, or rather during the release, he had started talking to the other side, so that soon after our release, the talks started between the ANC on the one side and the government on the other, and later the talks were joined by other organizations. And those talks eventually led to the first interim constitution for 5 years, and eventually to the constitution which was accepted after some years, a constitution which allowed for voting by all the people of South Africa who had not voted before. And it was after that that all of us were released, and Madiba was released, and the talks started, the so-called CODESA talks, and that led to the first democratic elections in 1994 when Madiba was elected as president. But when the National Executive sent a delegation to Madiba to say that the National Executive has decided that he should be the candidate of the ANC for presidency, Madiba's response was no. That should be given to a younger person, and preferably a female. But the delegation insisted that was the decision of the National Executive. You'll have to accept the decision of the National Executive. So he was a great Democrat. He accepted that, He said, I'll accept it, provided I only serve one term and no longer. They told him, that's not for you to decide. He said, well, I'll only serve one term. And immediately after that, he went to the media and he told them, I'm only prepared to serve one term. And that is what he served. After one term, he stood down and made place for President Thabo Mbeki. That was Madiba. Now one can go on and on speaking about him, but I want to just say we miss him for his humanity, for his companionship, for a person who regarded all of us as equals. Regardless of color, regardless of age, we were all his equals. He treated us all as equals. In his presence, we all felt comfortable. He made us feel comfortable. And for many, many things, we miss him. Although he had retired from politics, we still, some of us went to him, turned to him for, I personally had to turn to him not only for political advice, but for very personal, private things. I could turn to him, as I could turn to Walter Sisulu before him. But Walter Sisulu died, I could turn to Madiba. And at his funeral a year ago, I said the same thing, that I had to turn to him for my most private matters. Who do I turn to now? I'm still groping. I'm living in a void. There is no Walter Sisulu to go turn to. There is no Madiba to turn to. I'm still waiting to know who do I turn to. But history will tell us one day who we should turn to. I want to thank you very much for your patience, for listening to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, comrade. Can I please ask you to stay a bit as I ask Philip Jennings and the President to present you with the UNI Global Union Freedom from Fear Award.
Ahmed, thank you very much for a brilliant presentation. You are a legend in this country of South Africa. You have made an enormous contribution to the fight for freedom for the people of South Africa. And for a man who was invited to speak but not given a topic to speak on, I think you have done a brilliant job today. So it is a very great honour for Philip and I to present the UNI Global Union Freedom from Fear Award to this great man who epitomises the struggle that has gone on in this country.